here with a brand new installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I hope today is treating you magnificently. We got a lot to talk about. It's been a little while since we've had a podcast episode. Combine starts actually today. Kickers are going to be on the field. So we'll preview the combine and we'll talk about some names that I'll be looking out for in particular. I'll give you my overview of the draft itself, and the position groups, and where the draft is strong, in my opinion, solid, and then not so good, and so forth. We'll talk about these veteran quarterbacks. I find these quarterbacks to be very interesting because I think they hold the key to a lot of what will transpire in the draft. If you already have a quarterback in tow and you feel good about your situation, if you are, say, the Browns or say the Titans, then you can bypass the quarterback position altogether, right? If you don't, then things change. Same thing with the Giants, I would presume, right? So we're going to talk about them as well, among other topics here on the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 485th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Some warm weather, man. This feels good. It feels like springtime outside. Virginia is so Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And anybody that's lived here for any amount of time understands what I'm talking about. The highs, the lows, the ebbs, the flows of this state is ridiculous. And you may live in a state and say it's the same thing here, but ain't nothing like VA weather. Like, you don't know if you should put a coat on or if you should take your coat off, if you should wear short sleeves or if you should have 5 shirts on. This weather is crazy. One day it's 70, the next day it's 40. One day it's 55, the next day it's 26. And you're like, what the hell is going on? We know what's going on, but feels good to get some warm weather after all of this cold weather, all of this snow that's been falling. It's nice to see the sun. It's nice to go outside and not be freezing my balls off. Feels good. 60s the last 3 days, I believe. Today feels like damn near 70. This is nice. I can get used to this. Anyhow, what's going on, everybody? Let's dive into the gym dropping session. I actually wanted to shoot the shit with y'all for a little bit. I had a couple of things to bring to your attention, but I'm short on time. So we'll do that another time if I remember. My brain is crazy sometimes. So I may forget for like 6 episodes and then remember randomly. Oh yeah, you know what? I meant to ask y'all about this, or I meant to say this to you guys. But we'll circle back hopefully down the line. But let's jump into the proceedings this evening, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, over the weekend, I was starting to consume a lot of the draft stuff and really starting to get my mind right. Because I told you last week I was really like dragging my feet, kicking and screaming. Like, I don't want to do this draft stuff this year. I'm just so fixated on free agency because my team was so close. But I got my mind right. I'm where I need to be now. I'm back in the game. And in doing all of this research and all of this homework, I stumbled over a few videos talking about these free agent quarterbacks or these veteran quarterbacks that will be available this offseason. And, I started thinking about how these guys are going to shape and mold this draft. As you start to see people constructing these mock drafts, some of them are doing it with teams acquiring quarterbacks via the trade or free agent market, and that is what is driving their selections. We've talked about the top of this year's draft. It's not like last year's, or for that matter, a year where the quarterback crop is strong. Generally, if you have one or two quarterbacks that teams believe in, then you know who the number one pick is going to be. It's going to be a quarterback, right? Or at least what position group it's going to come from. That's not the case this year. It could be a quarterback, right? But it could also be an edge rusher. And it's always going to be a premium position. So it's hard for me to believe that Travis Hunter would be the number one pick in the draft. If it's not a quarterback, it's Abdul Carter. We already know what it is. It's either an offensive lineman, an edge rusher, or a quarterback. Generally, teams are going to go with premium players if they're not taking a quarterback, which is also a premium position. But if you're not taking a quarterback, you're going to go with a position that you feel good about. And you feel comfortable spending the number one overall pick in the draft. And that's either going to be an offensive tackle or an edge rusher, right? You rarely see corners go first. You never see running backs anymore go first in the draft. I don't think we've had a running back go number one overall since, 94? And that's never going to happen again. I don't care how good the running back is. You're never going to see a running back go first in the NFL draft ever again, okay? That's a thing of the past. And you're probably not going to see a wide receiver go first. What the last time we saw a guy go one was Keyshawn Johnson, right, at the receiver position. I think the closest we've come, if I'm not mistaken, was Calvin Johnson back in whatever year that was the draft. 07, maybe, I think. 06, whatever the Jamarcus Russell draft was. I think he was the 06 draft. Maybe 07, somewhere in that neighborhood. I think Calvin Johnson went second in that draft to the Lions, if I'm not mistaken. So you're not going to see a receiver go first in the draft, I don't think, again, either, which is why I don't see Travis Hunter going first in this year's draft. But I do find it very interesting that these quarterbacks are playing a fun game of musical chairs. And everyone's going to end up with a seat, right? Maybe except one of these guys. We'll talk about him when we get to him. But it's fascinating to see the impact that these guys could potentially make on a new home, right? If they find the right location. We've seen magic happen in the NFL. In the NFL, unlike other sports, it's set up for parity. You pair the right quarterback with a team ready to win now, and we've seen things happen, right? We were on a little bit of a streak there. There was a 2-year streak where you go out, you go get yourself a veteran quarterback for a ready-made roster, and you win the Super Bowl. Brady did it in 2020. Stafford did it the next year in 2021. We just assumed Russell Wilson was going to do it in 2022, and then the wheels kind of fell off from there. But we could be right back in that scenario this year if the right quarterback pairs with the right organization and the right team. Who's to say that we won't see a team win the Super Bowl with a veteran quarterback who is, in his first year with his new squad? So let's talk about 6 quarterbacks in particular, because I think these guys are going to go a long way in kind of helping shape and mold what the draft ultimately looks like. If you're going to be making mock drafts, I think it is really imperative to figure out where these guys are going to end up, because if they don't end up in these certain locales, then you have to anticipate a quarterback being selected for these teams. So, and there still could be quarterbacks taken by these teams, even if they take one of these veteran quarterbacks in this offseason. So a lot of questions, but let's find some homes for these quarterbacks, right? Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold, Matthew Stafford, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and Kirk Cousins. Now, of those 6, Cousins is the only one that feels like it's going to be tough for him to get out, right? Everyone else, I think, has a legitimate shot of finding a new home. or at least a stable one. In the case of Russell Wilson, he could stay put right in Pittsburgh with the Steelers, and no one would bat an eye if that were to take place. But let's go through these guys in the order in which I think the impact can be the greatest. Okay. So obviously, Matthew Stafford heads up this group in terms of the impact that he can have. He could shift the balance of power in the NFC. And not like he goes to a team in the NFC, i.e. the Giants. And I think that's the best destination for him. But not like the Giants all of a sudden are going to be a Super Bowl contender, but they will be a much better team. And I start with the Giants and I start with Matthew Stafford because the Giants are in a really precarious situation with their, ownership right now. John Mara has made it very clear that his general manager, Joe Shane, and head coach, Brian Daboll, are on the hot seat. He wants to win, and he wants to win now. And he thought about getting rid of both of them, but he went against his, I won't call it better judgment, but he did go he did say to himself, I need to give them another year, but I do want to see some results and I do want to win. So the Giants aren't in a position, and I've always advocated for teams to not draft young quarterbacks into chaos. That's what the Giants situation presents, pure chaos. And if you want a quarterback to fail, draft him into a situation where you've got a lame duck GM and head coach. And the Giants aren't a quarterback away from winning a Super Bowl. They may not even be a quarterback away from winning enough games to qualify for the postseason. However, who would have thought the Commanders would have done what they did last season by just drafting a rookie quarterback? Now, a lot changed there with that organization from top to bottom, and that also helped facilitate change. But the Giants, I don't think, are as far away as people assume. If they get a couple of pieces in this offseason, obviously the quarterback being the biggest of them all, I think the Giants could be a very formidable team. They were in a lot of games last season that they simply could not win because they did not get enough out of the quarterback position. So with that said, now the schedule is going to be a lot tougher this year, and we'll see what happens. And generally, when you get a desperate coach and a desperate general manager, things are a little off because they feel the pressure. It's never a good situation to have your head coach essentially going into a year where he knows he has to win or else. Same with the general manager. But because of that mindset, I don't think Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are in a position to just draft a quarterback and just let it ride, right? They have to win. And if you draft Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, winning may not be the priority in year one. It may just be developing a quarterback. But guess what? You may not be there to see that process through, right? Because you need to win 9, 10, 11 games to show progress to the ownership group that, hey, we are the right men for the job. Just give us another year to show you that we can get it done, right? You go get Stafford and you're going to accelerate that process and give yourself a chance. That's from the Giants' perspective. Now, if we're talking about from a Matthew Stafford perspective, the Giants don't make any sense for him because, one, he wants to stay on the left coast. He likes it in LA. He likes the warm weather. He wants to really stay on that side of the country if he can. And the Giants aren't in a position to win. You go from the Rams, who were, one or two plays away from the NFC Championship game a season ago, to a Giants team that won, 3 games last season? 4 games max? I think they were 3-14, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a pretty precipitous drop-off if you're Matthew Stafford at this juncture of your career. What's more important, getting paid or finding a destination that gives you a chance to win? The Raiders are also involved, and we saw that, he met with Tom Brady. He also met with the Giants brass, and his representation is met with the Giants as well. So there is dialogue and communication going on. Stafford has been allowed to test the market. And keep in mind, this could all just be for the Rams' purposes of figuring out how much he could command on the open market. And then the Rams could just turn around and say, okay, we'll pay you that, right? So this could all just be a ploy by the Rams to figure out what they need to spend and not a penny more so that they don't overpay for Matthew Stafford's services moving forward. I think in a perfect world for the Rams, someone will overpay to get Matthew Stafford off of them, and they would pivot to a different direction. We'll talk about what that direction could potentially be. But Stafford also has the Raiders. Brady has sat down, kind of chummed it up with him, trying to sell him. And again, that's more so on that left coast of the United States where he probably more so wants to be with his wife. The Raiders don't seem like they're in a great position to win, but they're not as bad as the Giants. It doesn't feel like they're as far away as the Giants are, but I don't know that to be true. I don't look at the Raiders roster and say, well, like they don't have a Malik Neighbors. I look at the Giants and I say they got a Malik Neighbors. They got a Theo Johnson. You assume that in this deep crop of running backs, they're going to come away with one in this year's draft class. If you can get a tackle opposite of Andrew Thomas, continue to fortify that offensive line, what's stopping you from having a very dynamic offense? That's not a bad Giants roster, right? It's not a great roster, obviously, but with some work this offseason and a few, pieces within the draft, and of course, getting the quarterback, I think this is a team that could be in the mix. They've spent some resources on the defensive side of the football. They can continue to do that. Obviously, they have to shore up that back end right now. That's a big issue for them, but I think the Giants are closer than the Raiders from a talent perspective. But that's just me. We'll see what Stafford decides is most important for him as he goes into the twilight of his career. And then obviously the Rams still exist for him. He could stay right in LA. Again, this could all be a ploy from the Rams side just to figure out what the market is for him. If they don't like what teams are offering, if they don't like, if the number isn't too outrageous that Stafford would command at this point of his career, they may be perfectly fine giving him that extension he's looking for to let him ride out the rest of his career in LA. He's done a great job in LA with that organization and Sean McVay. And to me, if it's not broken, why are you looking to fix it? So it's still a head-scratching situation as to what the Rams are ultimately trying to do here. But the Rams have always been unconventional. When everybody's zigging, the Rams are always zagging. So it makes sense that when we're all saying, man, you were close last year, they're like, yeah, but, and you're like, but what? I mean, you got this young defense that's super talented, that you're capable of winning games with. We saw that last year. You got Puka Nacua that obviously you're going to build around from a wide receiver standpoint. You're going to add another guy in the draft, presumably this year. You got Kyron Williams. You drafted Blake Corum, so you like your running back room. You got, they're going to add a tight end in a very deep tight end draft class. They're going to add some talent to that position. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, just bring Stafford back and let's run it back and see what you can get done, right? We'll see what happens. But Stafford, to me, one of three destinations: Raiders, Giants, Rams. To me, the best place for him is obviously back in LA with the Rams. But if he's not back in LA, I think it's the Giants. I really think the Giants, and I think it's good for both sides from this. Well, it's good for the Giants side, obviously, because of their situation with their GM and their head coach. But from Stafford's perspective, that's a place where you could win now if they surround him with the right pieces. I don't see him wanting to go to the Steelers. That would be the best scenario of all the teams that are looking for a quarterback. The best actual scenario or situation for any prospective quarterback would be Pittsburgh. You've got talent. They're going to draft another running back this year. You've got talent at the receiver position. You're going to get Roman Wilson back next year. That's like another draft pick. He didn't play last season. You're going to get Roman Wilson back in addition to George Pickens. And what you already have, you got a really good tight end already. The offensive line could use a little bit of work, but it's not a terrible group. You've got a talented defense that's capable of keeping the score down. That's the ideal situation for a quarterback. If you're looking to kind of play out the rest of your career and have a shot to win, it's Pittsburgh. But I just don't see Stafford being a great fit in Pittsburgh with the Steelers. So for me, it's the Raiders, it's the Giants, or it's the Rams. Giants makes the most sense if it's not the Rams, and the Raiders are, to me, not too far behind because of the proximity to LA, where he really wants to be, and Tom Brady's influence. And we'll see what the Raiders are able to do. I just don't think there's enough talent in Vegas for Matthew Stafford, but we'll see. The next guy that I think has a chance to really impact a franchise, and I've said this many a times, and I told you guys last year, I think he's still got something left in the tank, is Aaron Rodgers. So there's two places I think he can wind up. And if it's not one of these two places, then retirement to me is the only other option. At this point of Aaron Rodgers' career, he's not looking to just play football for the love of the game. Like, he's not looking to go to Tennessee. Okay. That's a love of the game decision. Like, that's not where Aaron Rodgers is in his journey. If it ain't about a chip, then it don't make any sense, right, for Aaron Rodgers. To me, the Steelers make the most sense for Aaron Rodgers. If it ain't about a chip, then it doesn't mean shit for Aaron Rodgers. And they feel like the perfect place for him. I think he can still sling it. I think you're going to see a little. I thought we saw a little bit of that mobility come back towards the end of the season as he got healthier and healthier. There's some talent out there for him to get the ball to. I think he could make beautiful music with George Pickens. I really think they're going to add a running back there behind him, and he's got a tight end he can throw to, and Pat Freiermuth, and I think there's enough talent in Pittsburgh. And then with that mindset, that mentality of a Mike Tomlin and how they gut out games, it's very similar to the Jets in terms of the blueprint, but it's not dysfunctional like the Jets are. It's a well-oiled machine, the way that they conduct business. I could see him going into Pittsburgh and having the Steelers as a 12-win team next season. Obviously all things, line up the way that, I anticipate them lining up, but, he's got to stay healthy, and they've got to stay healthy, and then they have to be productive. But the Steelers feel like a great destination. I don't know if you guys caught wind of Deshaun Elliott, Steelers safety, saying that he doesn't want Aaron Rodgers. As a matter of fact, he needs to stay at the old folks' home, right? The retirement home. So that would be a very odd situation if they were to pursue Aaron Rodgers, knowing that there are guys on that team that have been vocal and publicly vocal, not wanting Rodgers on their roster. So that would be interesting. But trust me, if they're interested in Rodgers, which the Steelers should be, Deshaun Elliott's opinion shouldn't change how they feel, and it shouldn't alter their decision-making, right? If the Steelers aren't an option, or it's not one that's very feasible, at least, if Stafford moves on from the Rams, then the number one place for Rodgers should be LA with the Rams. And I think that would be their pivot. If let's say the Giants are willing to give up this year's 1 and next year's 3, and they're like, okay, we can't pass that up for Stafford, and they do the deal, right? Or let's say the Giants are willing to give up this year's 2 and next year's 2. Say they're not parting ways with their 1 this year because they want to build around Stafford, and they're not doing that. But they say, we'll give you this year's 2 and we'll give you next year's 2 for Stafford. And they tell, and it's a conditional 2, which could go to a 1 if the Giants make the postseason, right? And the Rams say, oh, well, we can't pass that shit up. We'll take it. They move on from Stafford, and then they can bring in Aaron Rodgers, and they can do it on a discounted rate. They got some guys they got to sign. Alaric Jackson is a free agent. They're trying to pick up draft capital, and they're trying to clean up some money situations because they got guys to sign. Puka Nakua's going to be a free agent here shortly. You start looking down the line, Kobe Turner's going to be a free agent soon. At some point, they got to set themselves up to be able to pay these guys, and that's why they don't want to tie themselves to Matthew Stafford on a 3-year extension with it being $50 million a year with a cap hit that's probably going to surpass $40 million every year. They don't want to put themselves in that position. So if they can avoid it, That's what they're looking to do. And Aaron Rodgers isn't going to cost you nearly as much, fraction of the cost for Aaron Rodgers at this juncture of his career. So that's the pivot. And I think they believe Rodgers can still give them something. That's an offense that I think is very quarterback friendly, especially as you continue to age. I think that Rams offense is very quarterback friendly. I think Rodgers could go in there and be the next quarterback in line to have Sean McVay whispering in his ear sweet nothings as he wins football games at a high clip. So the Rams would be another destination that I think would make a ton of sense, probably the most sense for Aaron Rodgers. But that's assuming, and obviously that's hinging upon the exit of Matthew Stafford, which we cannot be certain of. So with that said, the Steelers make the most sense for Aaron Rodgers because those are the only two destinations that you can look at and say with a reasonable projection that these teams have a legitimate shot at winning something. And if you're Aaron Rodgers, that's what you're in it for. The next guy that I think has a chance to make a big difference, believe it or not, is Justin Fields. And I actually think his situation is the most unique out of all of these quarterbacks from this perspective. He just wants a chance. Most of these guys want to be very picky and selective as to their next destination. Justin Fields clearly is going to be picky and selective, but at the same time, he just wants a chance to start. He wants an organization that's going to give him a chance to compete and have an opportunity to be somewhere where he gets an opportunity to have the support of the organization and have a chance to win, right? I think there are three places that stick out like a sore thumb for him. The first, and this is not a great organization, and I'm hoping Aaron Glenn goes in there and turns it around, but the Jets. They kind of seem like they're in no man's land right now, without a quarterback, with not in a position to draft one, not one of note at least. And they went on a late season run where they won a few games there that kind of mucked up their draft positioning. So even if they were thinking about potentially taking one of these quarterbacks in the first round, neither of them will probably be available at that point. So unless they plan on trading up, the Jets are kind of stuck. So they're going to have to hit the free agent streets, maybe even the trade market to see what's available at the quarterback position, and that's how they're going to solve that position, at least for the upcoming season. Justin Fields makes the most sense. He's young. You could theoretically have him be very successful in that organization. And I've always said the Jets are very talented. You know, they're not void of talent. The problem is they had no direction, no leadership, no guidance. They just put a bunch of stuff together and expected it to work. It was a la Dan Snyder in the late 90s, early 2000s, where he thought he could buy a Super Bowl championship. And he found out very quickly, the hard way, that that's not how it works in this league. You can't buy continuity. You can't buy, excuse me, hold on. Oh. God bless me. Whew. Whew. These kids done got me, man. I've been over here fighting for my life. Boy. Whew. So the Jets, to me, are very interesting because they have talent. I don't know what's going to become of Garrett Wilson this year, if they're going to decide to move him. Doesn't feel like he's going anywhere. It really doesn't. But, you know, the draft could come about. A team could come calling, i.e. Hollywood Brown situation, i.e. the A.J. Brown situation with the Titans. And a team comes calling on draft night, and the Jets are like, yeah, we could do that. Yeah, I'll take your first round pick this year for Garrett Wilson. I'll take your second round pick for Garrett Wilson. Sure. And voila, Garrett Wilson is a member of the Washington Commanders at that point, or whatever the case may be, right? whatever other team is interested in his services. So there's no guarantee that he'll be there, but there's talent in New York at the receiver position, at the tight end position, at the running back position. They went out and got a bunch of veteran offensive linemen. We'll see how that goes, but they also have some young guys. They drafted Olu Fashanu last year, so um, there's a nice infusion of young and older offensive linemen. The defense is still solid, so we'll see what becomes of the Jets. But Justin Fields could go in there and take that team over by storm because we know he's talented. The inconsistency worries you, but if Aaron Glenn gets that defense to play the way that he thinks he's going to be able to go in there and get it to play, they won't need very many points. It'll be very Steelerish like. And remember, they started the season off 6-2 behind Justin Fields last season before Russell Wilson was able to come back from injury. So it's not like he wasn't getting the job done. It wasn't the prettiest all the time, but it was effective. And if you can play some defense, you can run the football, and he can take care of the football, you can win some games. And so Fields could be interesting in New York with the Jets. The place I think I'd really like to see him go, and their general manager has already said, and he said this pretty much at the end of the season, so we knew where this was going. And I talked about this. I said they got to go get somebody. The guy they drafted isn't good enough, and he's saying all the right things. Hey, we knew there was going to be bumps in the road in the development of Anthony Richardson. Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, he's cooked, man. I'd like to see him go to Indy. There's talent on that roster. That's a bad division. All you got to do is go in there and win 10 games, and you got a chance to win the division, man. Justin Fields with JT Money in the backfield and, all the weapons that they've started to put out there, Josh Downs and, Alec Pierce and, Michael Pittman Jr. Like, there's enough stuff in Indy, and I think they're going to add a tight end this year in a deep tight end draft class. They're going to continue to add. That's a quality defense. It's not a great unit, but it's a good enough defense. You put Justin Fields back there, and he could be what they were hoping Anthony Richardson was going to be. Shane Steichen, we've seen him do wonders with quarterbacks with the skill set of a Justin Fields. I'd love to see him go to Indy, man. I'd love to see him go to Indy and give them a real quarterback, the guy that they've been searching for. And he's still young. That's the beauty in Justin Fields. He's still young. Send him back to the Midwest, where he had the most success of his career thus far at Ohio State. Send him back to the Midwest. See if he can't get it done. And then there's the Raiders, obviously. Pete Carroll had a quarterback with a similar skill set in Russell Wilson, but I think the type of offense they're going to run with Clint Kubiak, it just doesn't mesh with Justin Fields' skill set, to me, at least. So I don't really love the Raiders as a great fit, but it is an opportunity that will exist, and they need a young quarterback out there in Vegas. So that's part of why they're on the list. But to me, it's the Jets or the Colts, and I really, really think the best destination for him is Indy, hoping that he gets an opportunity there to showcase his skills with a coach that's going to be able to nurture his talents and put him in the best positions to succeed. Justin Fields in Indy feels right to me. Sam Darnold. Let's talk about Sam seeing Ghost Darnold. To me, Indy makes sense. As I just mentioned, they're looking for a guy to come in and compete with Anthony Richardson. I think their head coach, because Shane Steichen is on the hot seat now because of Anthony Richardson's play. So I don't really think he is interested in going down the Anthony Richardson, road again, based off of what happened last season and the year before, knowing that the year before he was able to win, 10 games, I think it was 9 games with Gardner Minshew and just missed out on the playoffs with Gardner Minshew. Took a week 18 loss to the Houston Texans to clinch the division for the Texans 2 years ago, right? So in his mind, you just give me a formidable quarterback. Sam Darnold could be that, and I can do the rest. So Sam Darnold fits in Indy. And then I think the best destination for him is Vegas. They need a quarterback that's still relatively young that they could maybe, give a 2-3 year deal to, similar to what they thought they were getting out of Gardner Minshew, right? Guy that they gave a 2-year deal to. You give a 2-year deal to Sam Darnold. You give him an opportunity to prove that he's an NFL starter again, like a true NFL starter. You try to surround him with some talent, and we assume the Raiders are going to draft a back. We assume the Raiders are going to draft a receiver. They've got 2 receivers already that are really solid, that can make some plays for you. And so, obviously they got arguably the best tight end in football. If you don't want to give him that credit after his rookie season, fine. But there aren't many guys better than Brock Bowers at the tight end position in the NFL as of right now, right? And they also still have Michael Mayer as well. So they got a 2-headed monster at the tight end position. Like there's enough talent, and I said that there wasn't a ton of talent, and I still don't think that's the case, but there's enough if Stafford wants to go there. And I think there's enough if Sam Darnold wanted to go there and try to revitalize his career as a starter. So the Raiders make the most sense for Sam Darnold as a destination. And then you get to Russell Wilson. And to me, obviously, the elephant in the room is, Pete Carroll's in Vegas. He should just go back and reunite with him. But people forget that didn't end harmoniously in Seattle. Like, that wasn't a mutual parting of ways. That was a nasty exit. That was a nasty divorce. I'm not saying that there's super bad blood between the two of them, but it wasn't the most amicable split in Seattle. So I don't necessarily know if Pete Carroll's tripping and stumbling over himself to try to get to Russell Wilson. I don't think that's the case. And furthermore, the Steelers just don't seem like an out-of-the-box thinking organization, right? They seem like a hamster wheel, stuck in mud, quicksand, running in place type of organization. We're going to do things the Steeler way because we don't know any other way, right? And that's the thinking and the thought process that leads you to just reeing up with Russell Wilson and running it back as if it's going to be any different next year, right? And I could see in Mike Tomlin's mind some sort of warped thinking that, hey, if this didn't happen, if Russ had done this, or if I didn't do this, and if we would have been healthy here, and if this would have happened, it could have been different. And I'm like, yeah, no. You weren't beating Kansas City. You weren't beating Baltimore. You weren't beating any of the good teams in the conference. So I don't know of a year of Russ staying in the system, being in Pittsburgh for a consecutive season, getting all of the offseason work and getting some more weapons to add to the arsenal is ultimately going to help him be better. He is who he is at this juncture of his career, but maybe Tomlin saw enough to want to run it back. Just feels like of the quarterbacks that they had, the 2 they had last year, Russ seems the more he seems destined to be back in Pittsburgh. I could be wrong about that. If he's not in Pittsburgh, then it feels like the only other place where he would be welcomed is Vegas. If he's not welcome there, I don't really know where Russell Wilson ends up after that. I mean, again, I don't really know. Maybe Cleveland, right? I if I'm stuck Kevin Stefanski, I don't want Russell Wilson. I watched him up close and personal last year. He's okay. But he's not it's like getting Deshaun Watson. He's not a great fit for what Stefanski wants to do. He wants to get back to the play action game, the outside inside zone runs, and then the heavy play action fake off of it, which is why I said Deshaun Watson wasn't going to work. He tried to tailor his offense, which is what a good coach does, to Deshaun Watson's strengths. But that's not Kevin Stefanski's offense. That's not who he is. The offense looked the best under Baker Mayfield and Joe Flacco. Why? Because those 2 quarterbacks could run the under center, outside inside zone, ZBS, heavy play action fake offense, which is where Kevin Stefanski comes from. So with that said, Kirk Cousins to me is the best fit in Cleveland. And they need a guy similar to Russell Wilson's situation with the Broncos, where he comes over and he can sign a vet minimum deal, right? Because they were still paying him and eating all of that money. That's what the Browns need because of Deshaun Watson's situation, because he's eating up so much cap. And I know he restructured, but they still are in cap hell based off of that situation. And they really can't divulge any more real money, real assets other than draft capital to the quarterback position. So to me, if they want a veteran, it's got to be somebody who's extremely cheap. But you're not looking to get extremely cheap unless it's Kirk Cousins, because extremely cheap means it's extremely flawed. Not that Kirk Cousins isn't, but if we're talking about the play action outside, inside, outside zone, that ZBS scheme, it's Kevin O'Connell's offense, which Kirk Cousins thrived in. Stefanski would be a perfect fit for Kirk Cousins' skill set at this juncture of his career. And I think Kirk's going to be obviously healthier this time around, similar to Aaron Rodgers. I think you're going to see him be more mobile, able to get to that outside zone handoff, be able to go boot off of that, right? Like the old Kirk Cousins could. And so I don't think Kirk Cousins is finished. I've already told you guys that. I told you Aaron's not cooked, and neither is Kirk Cousins, but he needs an opportunity. And by all accounts, it does not sound like the Falcons are in any hurry to cut him loose. As a matter of fact, if you're not going to give up meaningful draft capital, they sound like they're perfectly fine. And what else are they supposed to say? They're supposed to say, oh, no, we're cool eating this money. We're cool. If you don't give us something, we're cool with just sitting there with him as our backup, paying him, whatever $1 million. We're cool with that. Look, we already spent the money, bro. We already spent the bread. So we're cool if you're not trying to give us some draft capital for him. And I believe them. Here's why I believe them. When they drafted Michael Penix Jr., they knew what they were entering themselves into. They knew what they were getting themselves into. They knew they were going to be in a position where they were eating this Kirk Cousins money, and you're going to have Michael Penix Jr. behind him. And if Kirk worked out, Penix would be sitting there. So they knew what they were getting themselves into. So what has changed now that Kirk's not playing? Nothing other than Michael Penix Jr. is now, your signal caller, and he's taking the reins from Kirk Cousins. But it's the same thing. It's the same money. It's the same situation, other than the roles have reversed. One's the starter now, one's the backup. But we were paying the money anyway, is my point. So unless you're willing to give us, like, they're not going to do the Russell Wilson thing where we can't even stand to look at him anymore. I can't have him in this building. We'll cut our losses. We'll pay whatever we got to pay. We'll take the cap hit. Let's just move on from him. That doesn't sound like the space that the Falcons are operating from. So with that said, I think Kirk Cousins is stuck in Atlanta. Now, would the Falcons be willing to eat the money, right? And but the Browns be willing to give up some capital to sweeten the deal and say, hey, you eat the money, but I'll give you draft capital so that we can take on Kirk Cousins, right? You eat the vast majority of his contract, but we'll slide you a 3rd round pick this year and another 3rd round next year that can become a 2nd round pick if Kirk Cousins leads us to the playoffs or plays 80% of the snaps and we win 10 games, whatever type of, whatever type of contingency, you want to put in there to have it kick in and turn it into a, whatever condition, that's the word I was looking for. Whatever condition you want to put in there to be the kicker, to move that up from a 3rd round into a 2nd round of the following year. Whatever. from a fourth to a third, from a third to a second, whatever you got to do to entice Atlanta to eat a chunk of that money and allow you to get him for pennies on the dollar. That's where Kirk Cousins belongs in Cleveland. And that's all Kevin Stefanski needs is someone that can run his offense, a competent NFL quarterback that can run his offense. Jameis Winston could run his offense. He has an issue with throwing it to the wrong color jersey, right? But we saw how dynamic the offense looked when he was out there versus how it looked when Deshaun Watson was under center. So that's how I feel about the veteran quarterbacks. You tell me what you think. You probably just think all of these guys are cooked. All these guys suck. None of them are going to win anything anywhere. It doesn't matter where you put them. I still think there's a little something left in the tank for some of these guys. So tell me what you think. Leave it down in the comment section. Let's get to our next segment. But before we do, let's get a word from one of our sponsors. It's your man Louie T here on behalf of the beautiful people over at Via who have blessed me with some awesome hemp-based products that I want to share with you. I'm going to talk about some of my favorites today. And the products range from 0 milligrams of THC, so no psychoactive or intoxicating effects, to 100 milligrams of THC, which is going to send you to the moon. If that's what you're looking for, knock yourself out. That's too much for me, but again, to each its own, right? So let's go through these products quickly, and I'll talk about them. And the first one I'm going to talk about is Flow State, and this is one that has no THC in it. This is a focus-driven product here, and I love this one because it gives me the focus that I need sometimes when I may be lagging, I may be a little bit tired from the night before, don't have the juice, the energy that I need. This gives me that focus, that extra kick that I need to get my projects done. This one here is Elevate. Mango Tango is the flavor, and all of the flavors are so delicious, man. For someone who doesn't eat a lot of candy, being vegan, and all of these products are vegan, by the way, so you know I love that as well. I don't get a lot of sweets. These things give me just the right amount of kick of sweet and also the intended effect that I'm looking for. This is a microdose option, 2 milligrams of THC. And this one, again, Elevate. Looking to get you high, if that's what you're looking for, this can do it. And again, it ranges from 0 THC, milligrams of THC, all the way to 100. So you can go with what works for you. Now, having some trouble sleeping, Dreams is one that'll help you out. My wife takes the non-THC version of this sometimes when she's having trouble sleeping, and it works like a charm. And so again, if you're looking for something to help you go to sleep, a sleeping aid, you want to feel a little buzz while you're doing it, that's a microdose option that I just showed you, or you can just get the non-THC version. Now, my two personal favorites, and you'll know why in a second. High Love is my first. This one is 5 milligrams of THC. And again, you can get that all the way up to 100 if you so choose. But you know why I like this one, right? Me and the wife enjoy this one a lot. Yeah? Huh? Yeah? You get where I'm going with this? Maybe? Yeah? No? Maybe? So, I don't know. But the other one is Cloud9, and that's self-explanatory, okay? Cloud9 takes you higher, right? When I'm on the couch on a Friday and I just want to mellow out and I just want to watch TV and relax, this is my go-to right here. Love it, feels great, and it gets the job done every single time. So what says you? You interested? Link up above will take you straight to the Via website. Use my promo code LouieT for 15% off of the purchase. And again, if you've never been to the Via website or you've never purchased from Via before, you'll also get a free gift with your purchase as a first-time user. So again, a lot of benefits. Once again, link is above, right? That'll take you straight to the site. Use my promo code LouieT, and that'll get you an additional 15% off. And if it's your first time, you'll also get a free gift with it as well. So what are you waiting on, man? Looking to have a good time, looking to chill, or just looking for an intended effect. Maybe you need to focus a little bit more. Maybe you're having trouble sleeping. Maybe you need some relief. Maybe you went to the gym. Maybe you got a previous injury and you're looking for some relief. They've got all of those products and then some on their site. Check them out and tell them your man Louie T sent you. You won't be sorry. Trust me. All right, so we're back like cook crack. Episode 485 of the Louie T Network podcast. Really appreciate all of you for joining the kid today. And we're going to transition to social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know what it is. And we're talking NFL Scouting Combine 2025 variety. Want to kind of give you a preview of what I'm looking for. I can't speak for anyone else. I want to tell you what I'm going to be looking for heading into the combine and kind of give you a brief synopsis of what I've gathered in my studies thus far with the draft as to what I think of this draft thus far. So let's just start with the combine. The combine is the most overrated product that the NFL currently has. It's a waste of time for the consumer. A lot of these guys don't participate at the combine. It's a great opportunity for the guys that are fifth, fourth, third round, projected picks to, elevate their draft stock, to force people to go back and watch the tape. It's a great opportunity for the guys that are a little bit off the beaten path to maybe make a name for themselves and maybe push themselves up a round or two by going out and maybe disproving a notion. Oh, he can't run. And then he goes out and runs a 4.2. And they're like, oh shit, didn't know that. The tape, I love the tape. I didn't think he could run. So there's an opportunity for guys to really help themselves. This is also an opportunity for teams to meet these prospects for the first time in person, sit down, have a conversation with them, get to know them just a brief bit. And, obviously the combine was created for the medicals. That was the initial reason for the combine in the first place, to get the medicals on these players, so forth and so forth. So I always tell you this about the combine. I watch so you don't have to, because if I didn't have to, I wouldn't. It's a very bad product. Okay. And this is part of the reason why it's a bad product. Some of the top names in the draft aren't going to participate. And I get it. We're past the point of arguing whether guys should compete or not. Like that shit's dead. Okay. If I've already been told that I'm going to be a top 3 pick, what is the purpose of me going out and competing at the combine? Competing at the combine for what? What is it going to, what am I going to do? The tape is there. You know my skill set. I'm going to work out at my pro day. You're more than welcome to join me there, right? Like, it is what it is at this point, right? So no Abdul Carter, no Ashton Genty. These are guys that we want to see, that we're not going to see. No Tyler Warren, okay? No Shador Sanders. Cam Ward is still, kind of mulling over whether he's going to throw or not. I bet you he's going to err on the side of not throwing when it's all said and done. So the top 2 passers of this draft, and we've done this before. As a matter of fact, we did it last year, right? Where, I can't remember who threw at the combine last year, but I know for a fact Jaden Daniels nor Caleb Williams threw last year. I don't know if Drake May threw or not last year. I don't think he did, but I can't remember. So it's not a big deal, right? It is what it is. So as you move forward into the draft itself, these are the positions that I think are very deep. This is overall not a super talented draft class, right? Overall, it's a good, solid draft. It's not a bad draft. I think it gets a bad rap because it's not a lot of great quarterback prospects. And generally, when we think about really good drafts, you think about the top of the draft and you think about quarterbacks. This draft doesn't necessarily have that. This is not 2022. This ain't that. Okay. So let's not disrespect this draft class and treat it like it's 2022, because it's not. However, these are the positions that I think are extremely deep, and you can probably find yourself a starter within the first 2 days of the draft. And in certain instances, depending on the position and how many are taken in the first 2 days, you may be able to find you a starter into day 3 at these positions. Defensive tackle, interior offensive line, edge rusher, running back, and tight end. Those are the 5 positions that, and when I say positions, I'm lumping interior offensive line centers and guards into one group, right? Those positions you can find in this draft plentiful. Like there are an assortment of these guys, whatever kind you're looking for, you can find, and they're going to exist for upwards of 4 to 5 rounds, potentially. Tons of talent at those positions. The positions that I think are solid in this draft, they're not great. It's okay. You can find you some talent and you can find you some starting caliber stuff, but it's not great by any stretch of the imagination, is wide receiver, cornerback, safety, and quarterback. Those are the 4 positions that I think is solid. You can find you a starter in this draft and feel good about what you came away with, right? I liken it to going to the store and shopping. The first 5 positions, defensive tackle, interior offensive line, edge rusher, running back, and tight end, those are the positions where you feel like, man, I really feel good about my purchase. And I feel like I paid a really solid price for it too. I didn't overspend, got a good deal, and I feel good walking away with what I just purchased. Wide receiver, cornerback, safety, and quarterback, those are positions where you're like, I didn't necessarily love the price, but I feel comfortable with what I'm walking away with. I didn't love the price I had to pay, but you know, or vice versa, right? I didn't mind the price. Actually, that's a pretty good price point, but the quality, it's okay. It's all right. You know, I might wash it twice and it might shrink on me if I put it in the dryer, and all of a sudden, I don't think I'm going to be wearing that too many more times. And then offensive tackle and linebacker are the 2 positions where good luck. Good luck. You want one, you better get one fast while supplies last. So with that said, let me give you some names of guys that I'll be looking out for, and then obviously position groups. So let's just start with the quarterbacks. This is an opportunity with no Shedeur Sanders and potentially no Cam Ward for the Quinn Ewers and the Kyle McCords and the Jalen Milrows and the Jackson Darts of the world to step up. Will Howard even to step up and assert themselves. And like after the first 2 quarterbacks, I think Jackson Dart has separated himself as the clear third quarterback, right? But that's not like etched in stone. I believe that's the case, though. It feels like you're going to get 2 first-round quarterbacks, 1 in the second round, which is going to be Jackson Dart, and then you don't get another one until potentially the 4th round, but probably somebody will come off the board in the 3rd. But I wouldn't be shocked if you don't get any more quarterbacks taken until day 3, excuse me, in the 4th round. But honestly speaking, after Jackson Dart, these guys are all over the place. Quinn Ewers, Kyle McCord, Jalen Milrow, they're all over the place. So if you're one of those guys, here's an opportunity for you to step up. Some of these guys, these scouts, these evaluators, these general managers and decision makers, they've never seen you throw in person. This is an opportunity for you to go out there and for them to go, oh shit, there's some RPMs there, right? That he's spinning that thing, you know, footwork looks good. You can tell he's been working on it. You know, if you're like a guy like Kyle McCord, this is an opportunity for him. That's who I'm really speaking to, right? I'm really talking to Kyle McCord. I'm really talking to Quinn Ewers in particular. Those are the 2 that I'm looking at, and I'm saying, like, we know Jalen Milrow has a big arm and he's a super athlete, but there's a lot of things mechanically wrong with what he does, right? There's going to take a lot more fixing than just him, you know, flinging it at the combine. McCord and Ewers have a chance to make some noise. We'll see if they take advantage of that opportunity or not, right? So here are some names that I'm going to throw out of guys that I'll be looking forward to seeing. Hopefully nothing changes and they don't back out, you know, last minute or decide, you know what, I'm just going to jump and, you know, and do the interviews, but I'm not, and maybe some on-field drills here or there, but not going to run the 40, et cetera, et cetera. The first guy is Walter Nolan, defensive tackle out of Ole Miss. This guy looks like a freak, man. And having watched Jalen Carter in Philadelphia and seeing the impact of defensive tackles in this league and what you can do Like the Rams are a great example of what you can do when you can control the middle of the football field. The Rams are so good defensively. Yes, it helps when you got a rookie edge rusher come in and play well. You got Young on the other side that's really solid. And, you know, that's all fine and dandy. But what really makes the Rams tough to deal with defensively is Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk. They can control the game from inside on the interior, make life a living hell for you. And when you watch the good defenses in the league and the teams that play really good defense, it starts inside at defensive tackle. Think about the Chiefs defense. It starts with Chris Jones. Think about the Eagles defense. It starts with Jalen Carter. You think about the better defensive teams in the league, and it starts up front in the middle. Walter Nolan has a chance to be the next big thing at the defensive tackle position, I think. I think he has a chance to blow up this combine and be the first defensive tackle taken in this draft. He's that talented. This is a deep defensive tackle draft class, and there's plenty of guys, and he may end up being the third or the fourth defensive tackle taken in this draft. But if he goes and blows this combine up like I think he can, I think he could ascend to the first defensive tackle taken in this draft. He could become a top 7 pick in this draft. James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee, the edge rusher, who a lot of people have kind of towards the back end of the first round. And really a lot of that is due to his frame. He's got this tall, angular, lean frame. It's a lot like Leonard Floyd, who I call affectionately Gumby, right? That long, angular frame, but it's wiry, strong. But he's explosive, man. It's all get out. And there's some conversations where this guy could run a 4.3 at the combine. And the first 2 steps, I haven't seen a get off like that since Von Miller. Like, you know, D Ford had an explosive get off, but it wasn't Von Miller, right? I haven't seen an explosive get off like this. Maybe Michael Parsons too. Like Parsons has an explosive get off as well. But he's in that conversation, right? Can he go out and blow up the combine? Can he go out there and check all the boxes that people think he can check? And then you go from there, right? How much is he going to show up weighing, right? And then if let's say he puts on 12 pounds, and who knows, you know, guys like to bulk up for the combine and it slows them down, whatever. Let's say he bulks up a bit and is in tremendous shape, puts on 12 pounds, shows up at the combine and he's 254, right? And he goes out and he runs a 4 flat, and he jumps out of the gym and he's like, oh my God, right? Like all of a sudden he's a top 15 pick at that point, probably. If not, I'd love for him to be available at 29 when my Commanders select. But, you know, this is what the combine can do for guys that are on the fringe of being, you know, top 15 first round picks. You know, this for James Pierce Jr., there's like 3 scenarios for him. Top half of the first round, and that's if he has a great combine. Back into the first round, if he has an okay combine. If he doesn't have a great combine and you know, great spring, as people like to call it, then he can end up out of the first round altogether and be, you know, top end of the second round, top end of day 2. This is a big, you know, combine for him because he could run his way, he could perform his way right up into the top half of the first round. Emeka Egbuka is a guy that we were talking about on the Commanders Kings channel yesterday. That the only thing people question with him is speed. He's a tactician. He can separate as a route runner. He's got reliable hands. He's the most decorated from a production standpoint wide receiver in Ohio State history, which is saying a ton, knowing the rich history that comes from that school at that position. But the question is, can he run? And it feels like we ask these questions about Ohio State receivers who are fluid movers all the time. We ask the same question about Jackson Smith and Jigba. We ask the same question about Chris Olave, right? No different here with Emeka Egbuka. And so we'll see if he can check off that final box. If he can run, he runs a sub 4.5. I think he's a first-round pick. This guy is very interesting to me. Luther Burden III, wide receiver out of Mizzou. So he is in this really weird space where he had this excellent 2023. And then obviously you look for the encore, the consistency, and it didn't happen. It didn't manifest in 2024. And it's almost like people have forgotten how talented Luther Burden III is. And it wasn't the greatest, quarterback situation, or a lot of poorly thrown footballs when you watch his tape. And I think this is an opportunity for him to remind people of where he should be in this draft. Because I feel like there's this sense of he's an afterthought at the receiver position right now. He's a second-round pick. That's what it feels like. When we start talking receivers, he doesn't get brought up in that first group of receivers. It's kind of like off in that second group as sort of an afterthought. And I think he believes, and so do I, that he should be in that first group. He should be among those first group of receivers that get mentioned in this draft class. And this is his opportunity to remind everybody exactly why he should be in that mix to be the second or third, possibly fourth receiver taken in this draft, all of which go in the first round, right? I think Luther Burden III has a chance to remind people I'm him. So this is a great opportunity for him, I think. Let's get to some running backs, because this is an excellent draft at the running back position. Obviously, we've talked about that. We'll talk more about that, obviously, as time goes on this offseason and we get closer and closer to the draft. Omarion Hampton, obviously, is a huge topic of discussion, especially within the Commanders circles, because we need a running back. And we would love for him to be available at 29. I don't think that's going to happen. And the way that it won't happen is if he goes out and runs a sub 4.5 40, which people want to know, how fast is he? Because when you watch the tape, I'm not going to lie, I don't see breakaway speed. I see good speed, right? You know what I see? And I don't remember what Nick Chubb ran at his pro day or the combine, if he even participated. I don't remember. I think I remember Nick Chubb running at the combine. I'd love to know what his 40 time looks like, because that's what I see. But you know what I also see with Nick Chubb? Not a lot of guys catching him from behind. So I'm not really concerned. I'm pretty sure Nick Chubb was a 4.4 guy, if I'm not mistaken. But he could have been a 4.5, like low 4.5s, whatever the case may be. That's what I see with Omarion Hampton, right? Nobody catches Nick Chubb from behind very often, and nobody ever catches Derrick Henry, and he was a 4.5 guy too. So once again, if he's a 4.5 guy, it's not the end of the world, because game speed and 40 speed and acceleration and all those things are different. But I think he's going to run a sub 4.5. And if he does that, that's the last box he has to check. He does just about everything else. So same thing can be said for Quinshon Judkins. Like, those two Ohio State backs, let's go ahead and talk about both of them, because there's a real conversation as to which one will be selected first. And it's really just boils down to, what's your cup of tea? You're looking for the more physical, back with, I think, tremendous vision and really good agility, in Judkins with a little bit more size? Or you're looking for the home run threat in Travion Henderson? Guy can catch it out of the backfield. Judkins not as dynamic pass catcher. He can catch it out of the backfield, but it's more swing screens, check downs, that sort of thing. He's not out here running option routes out of the backfield like Travion Henderson can. Henderson's a little bit lighter, a little bit smaller than Judkins. Not as powerful, but offers you that explosive, dynamic home run hitting ability. We expect Henderson to run fast, former track athlete. What is Judkins going to run? What is Judkins going to run? If he can prove that there's a little bit of oomph, there it could be really interesting, right? And this is such a deep group. There are guys off the beaten path that people aren't even talking about. You could mess around and like a Jaden Blue, for instance, out of Texas. Like if you're just looking for a scat back, a guy that can break off a big run, right? RJ Harvey out of UCF. There's so many running backs in this draft class. I haven't even mentioned Caleb Johnson. We know he's going to run fast out of Iowa. You know what? I was over here eyeballing some stuff. I don't like looking at minors, but I was begging this man to come out. I don't know if it was possible, but I was begging the Michigan running back after they won the national championship. He had that big game. He had the 2 touchdown runs, and I was like, yo, come on, bro. I got a spot for you right now. And he didn't come out, and he didn't have a great season. And right now, he's not even projected to get drafted. And if he does, it's late in the draft. And I'm like, that guy could be undrafted. I'd love to take an undrafted flyer on him. I don't know why I can't think of his name. I can see his face. I can see his running style. I can see his number 7. I don't know why I can't think of his name right now. But there's so many running backs this year. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Anyway, and then Cam Scatterbo. Cam Scatterbo. Cam Scatterbo. I'm expecting a 4.6 something with him. If he can run in the 4.5s, I think that's good enough for most people. I think that's good enough for most people. Yes, Casper the Barbarian, Donovan Edwards. Donovan Edwards. I begged him to come out last year. I don't know if that was possible, but I was like, bro, I don't need to see anymore. You're good. He went back to be the feature back, didn't kill it, actually had his job taken, and he's an afterthought now. He's like RB20 in this draft. He probably won't get drafted. He might, if he does, you're talking late day 3. I think he could be undrafted. Sign me up for some Donovan Edwards as in UDFA. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, Cam Scatterbo is a guy that I thought did some awesome things at Arizona State this past year. And you can't do too much more than what he did in the game against Penn State. He gave them a legitimate shot. Was it Penn State or was it Texas? I'm mixing up my games. I think it was against Texas, if I'm not mistaken. He almost single-handedly won them that game. And there's a lot of people like, yo, Cam Scatterbo's a beast. And I'm like, yeah, he's not. He's solid. He ain't. But he not for me. You know what I mean? That's not my cup of tea. But he goes out. He runs a 4.58. He runs a 4.55. Okay. All right, I'm listening. You got my attention. He goes out and he runs that 4.63 or that 4.65 like I'm expecting him to. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought. I'm good. I'll pass. Thanks. But, you know, there'll be some team that's like, yo, he's perfect for me. There's a team out there where they could use that, right? I don't know what team it is, but there's a team out there that can put his skill set to use. So we'll see. We'll see. And then I want to talk about a couple of tight ends. Harold Fannin Jr. He's a guy that I am very interested in, and I think I've seen enough of him, like in terms of some of the games that he played in, where because when you play at a smaller school, and I don't want to make it seem like he plays at the smallest school ever, because that's not the case. But when you look at him and some of the games he played in, he's very interesting because you feel like he can separate at the next level, and you feel like there's real speed. And he's not the biggest guy in the world. I think he's like 6'3", 240, right? So it's like that's technically undersized at the tight end position. Like, what's the Miami Dolphins tight end? I like him a lot. He's really good. He's been around the block. He was with Tennessee, then he's with the Falcons. Jonnu Smith, then the Patriots. Now I think he made the Pro Bowl with the Dolphins last year. Jonnu Smith. That, like, he's like that size, right? So when you see a guy like that, you want to know, because if you're gonna be undersized, well, you better have an elite trait. So the question then becomes, can you run? Can you truly separate at the NFL level with athleticism? And I think he can. And there were a couple of games that he played in that lend you to believe that he has the ability to do that. I think he had a game against Penn State, and I think he had a game against Texas A&M, if I'm not mistaken. And I felt good about him running away from dudes. We know those teams have athletes, especially. I mean, Penn State's going to have 2 safeties drafted this year. Both of their safeties are going to be drafted this year. So you're playing against NFL talent, and you're running away from them, and you're separating, and so you needed to see that, being that he plays at a smaller school, not the greatest talent. Bowling Green, again, I don't want to make it seem like Bowling Green is out here playing the likes of South Dakota State or anything, but at the same time, it's Bowling Green. I can't even tell you what conferences these teams play in anymore, because the reshuffling is crazy, right? So I won't even attempt to tell you what conference Bowling Green plays in, but they play fair enough talent. But to see him play against those teams, and to see him running against those teams, now I want to put a time to that. And I think he's gonna fare well in a deep tight end draft class. How do you separate yourself? Here's an opportunity for him to do that. And then I also want to see Elijah Arroyo at the tight end position. I think he has a chance to blow it up. Miami tight end. So I want to see what he can do as well. And like I said, it's just a really deep tight end crop. So we'll see what happens. But those are some of the names. I'll be looking out at other positions. Positions as a whole: the running back position, the edge rusher position, defensive tackle, cornerback, wide receiver. Those will be positions that I'll really be studying extremely hard, watching the combine. Maybe a name or two will crop up. Well, oh, he's interesting. This is how I constructed my mock draft for the Commanders last year. And if you recall, of the 9 selections, I think I nailed 5 or 6 of them last year. Let's see. I got Jaden Daniels. I got Johnny Newton. I got Dominique Hampton. I got Jordan McGee. That's 4. And I think that was it. So I got 4 out of the 9 picks last year. I think I might be missing 1. I know I didn't get Coleman or McCaffrey, and I don't think I got any of the other 2 second rounders. I think I got 4 out of the 9, which is crazy. So this is how you start to see guys, and you start to develop, you know, a sense of, oh, they would fit here or there. So, all right, let's quickly get to the comment section, and then we'll transition to our final segment of the show. JB3, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. JB3 writes, you ain't no real Washington fan. There's a lot of these. Terry is easily top 7 to 10 wide receiver. He's a Pro Bowler, All Pro, and a 95 overall in Madden. How dare you say DK and Garrett Wilson are better? Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I didn't say that Garrett Wilson is better. I said that's up for you to debate. DK Metcalf, that's up for you to debate. Again, who made Madden the end all be all of where guys are rated? I stopped caring about Madden ratings over 2 decades ago. So you're talking to the wrong person about Madden ratings, which you're showing your age. You're a young guy. So because I don't have Terry as a top 10 receiver in the NFL, I'm not a real Washington fan. You sound dumb. And I think I'm going to talk about that a little bit more tonight, because I do have something else to say on that subject matter. But I'll save that to when I'm talking to Commanders fans, because I need Commanders fans to hear this loud and clear, including you, JB3. Rosario Satara Pileski, been a member for 33 months. Who writes, hey, Louie, did you see my first promo video for my book called Light Sensitivity Pain Reduction Techniques for Electronic Devices? I did not. Did you send me a link? Did you send me a link to it? I didn't catch that. I haven't seen a email from you in a minute, so I missed that one. But I'd love to see it. I would love to see it. So if you get an opportunity, send me the link. I'd love to check it out. And once again, congratulations on all that you got going on, man. Been a lot of things happening. Smacky, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Smacky writes, who's your favorite running back for the Commanders this draft? So I don't want to say too much now, because next week I plan on rolling out my draft coverage. I finally got all my artwork and everything situated, so I'm going to start rolling that out next week. And when I do that, that's when I'm going to start to tell you how I feel. But just know that there's a lot of guys that I would be perfectly fine with them taking. Now, it's ultimately, how do you feel about our current situation? Like, how do they feel about Brian Robinson? I'm looking for a compliment to him personally. I'm not looking to replace him right now. Right now, again, that alters how you go about it. If you're just looking for a compliment, a change of pace guy, you don't need to spend a first, second, or really you probably can wait to the 3rd round, to be honest with you. I think it gets dicey after, for us, because we don't have a 4th round pick. It gets dicey after the 3rd. Like, if you don't take a running back by the time you get to the 3rd round, now you got to wait to the 5th round. And again, I still think there'll be guys that'll fit the bill if you're just looking for a change of pace. But if you want something more than that, then you probably need to spend a 3rd round pick on the running back, right? If that's what you're looking for. But there'll still be guys. I just told you Donovan Edwards is a guy that may not even get drafted. And I'm not telling you he's great by any stretch of the imagination. But if you're looking for a guy that can run, he can do that, right? So there'll be, a bunch of guys that we'll talk about throughout this process, because, I love the fact that we keep everything close to the vest. You really don't know where they stand on any of that. We don't know how they feel about Brian Robinson Jr. We don't know what they're going to ultimately do with the position. Are they looking to replace him, as a lot of people believe, him being Brian Robinson Jr., or are they looking to complement him? Don't know. We'll see. This is the last year of his deal, though. So they could draft his replacement this season. I mean, this draft. They could draft his replacement. And I'd be okay with that, too. He just better be able to run if you're going to draft it. I don't want another Brian Robinson Jr. You know what I'm saying? So you'll know. By the time we get through this process, you'll know exactly how I feel about every position and who I feel like are the best guys for our team, who I would take if I were turning in the card for the Commanders. All right. So now let's get to our final segment of the show and garbage time. So I don't know if you guys have been keeping tabs on players that have requested trades or have been given permission to seek trades. Stafford hasn't requested a trade, but he has been told that he can go out there and kind of gauge the market. It's a weird situation with the Rams. We've talked about that already. But we've heard from all of the GMs in the NFL. We've heard from a lot of the head coaches in the league. So you've gotten a lot of information here on a lot of players. And it's really, again, take it with a grain of salt. Some of the stuff you could go ahead and run with it. Like it's a direct statement. There's nothing to try to parse through. They said what they said, right? And then in other situations, what are they supposed to say? Like in the case of John Lynch, he's like, yeah, we're in good standing with Deebo Samuel. And, there are a lot of suitors. What is he supposed to say? Yeah, ain't nobody called us yet about Deebo, man. We might have to cut him. Like when he said what he said, he was like, yeah, we're in good standing with Deebo, and there are a lot of teams interested, man. A lot of teams have called. I'm like, yeah, sure, buddy. Right. Okay. On to the next one. Cooper Kupp's available, obviously. Been given the ability to seek a trade. Jonathan Allen, as we talked about here on this channel, given the ability to seek a trade, he asked the Commanders, who didn't want to give him an extension, to trade him. And so he's been given permission to seek a trade. Good luck with that. And then Harold Landry, a guy that we talked about at the trade deadline last season, this past season rather, as a target potentially if you were looking to upgrade the edge rushing position, which we were as Commanders fans. That has been very prolific when healthy. He's looking for a new deal, coming off of a season where he almost hit double digits. I think he had like 9 sacks this past season. Titans are like, nah, we done paying you, bro. And you getting up there in age, not really looking to give you an extension. You cool and all, but you ain't like that. And you're getting older. So you want some more money, gonna have to find that elsewhere, bro. It's very similar to Jonathan Allen. Matter of fact, let's see how old our guy Harold Landry is. I've got to believe he's 29, pushing 30. He's 28. He will turn 29 in June. So yeah, he's right where I thought he would be, right around that 29 years old range. So yeah, essentially the Titans are like, yeah, bro, you almost on the wrong side of 30, so not looking to extend you. So if you want new money, by all means, go get your bag, bro. It just won't be here. So he's been given the ability to seek a trade. And then there's Jair Alexander, who Brian Gutekunst, the general manager of the Green Bay Packers, was sort of cryptic, kind of like, yeah, like, so a question was asked of him. Is Jair Alexander going to be a part of the Packers roster? And he's like, we're trying to figure that out. I'm like, And I knew there were some issues last year. He did some real dodo stuff. Remember, he was not playing in a game, and he went out to midfield as the one of the captains, and they suspended him for a game. And he's always hurt. And when he plays, I think he's overrated. So there's all of that. But he's still a solid corner in this league. And so they're trying to parse through whether he's a part of their future plans or not. They haven't put him on the block, but they're definitely listening if someone were to call. That's for sure. And they may ultimately cut him. I don't know what his cap situation is, and I don't know how it affects their cap if they were to move on from him. Is there a savings there? How much dead money is on the books if they were to move on from him? I know he has 2 years left on his deal. So 2 years is a very good number for a team if they're interested in trading for him. So be interesting to see if there's a market for Jair Alexander that exists. And, again, all of this stuff comes out right before the combine, because now that it's public knowledge, everybody's in the same building. If I know that you have a player that's potentially on the block, or now that I know it's public knowledge that is on the block, I can come up to you and we can have dialogue. So Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp, Harold Landry, Jonathan Allen, even Jair Alexander, maybe Matthew Stafford, all these guys that could potentially be moving teams. Kirk Cousins is another name to throw in the mix. This is the time where these deals start to gain traction. And in certain instances, you want resolution before the start of the new league year. So this is when a lot of those wheels start to get set in motion and they start to turn. And so I think we're going to see something happen next week with one or two of these players in terms of a trade or a release. In the case of a Deebo Samuel, maybe even a Cooper Kupp, just based off of not wanting to pay a bonus or this or that. So I think you're going to see something happen with some of these guys here shortly. But I don't know if you also caught wind of the Browns and their general manager, but they're holding firm, 10 toes down thus far. He said nothing's changed. We have no intentions of trading Myles Garrett. Nothing's changed on our end. And I don't see that position changing, because Myles Garrett, again, doesn't hold very much weight in this situation. Did you see the T. Higgins post? I hate cryptic posts, by the way. But he posted a picture of a cap. We all know somebody's lying. Who? I think he was talking about the Bengals GM, Duke Tobin, when he was talking about wanting to get a long-term deal done with T. Higgins, and they're working towards that, and he's got new representation, and we've been in communication. And he just posted a cap, and I'm like, come on, T, what are you talking about? He's not going anywhere. Again, they're going to franchise tag him. And they're gonna get a long-term deal done. I believe that. So don't get your hopes up. He's not going to hit the free agent market. They're gonna re-sign him. But this is an interesting time when you get into this space at the combine. This is when shit gets real. That's when the draft starts to heat up, because now pro days start to, once you get the combine behind you, now the pro days start to hit. Now you get those in-person interviews, you get those visits that each club gets. I think you get 30 of them, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, you get about 30 of them where you can meet with prospects at your facility. So you start to see those, and things start to take shape. But more importantly, after the combine, free agency, the new league year is right upon us. And I think we would be essentially a week removed from the start of the new league year. New league year starts on March 10th. The combine is over on March the 4th, if I'm not mistaken. March 3rd, March 4th, whatever that Sunday is. Saturday is the 1st. Sunday is the 2nd. So the 3rd is Monday. So the combine's over on the 2nd. The franchise tag window closes on the 4th of March. The new league year starts on the 10th of March. So you're literally a week away after the combine from the start of the new league year. And the tampering window opens on the 8th of March. So literally, after the combine's over, you're 6 days removed from the tampering window when we start to find out where guys are going to probably go. Because we don't have to wait for the day of free. I remember when I first started this, I would rush home from work, sometimes leave early, to sit in front of my TV at 4:00 when all of the news would start breaking on free agencies and where guys were going to sign. And now that's a thing of the past. You know, we're getting all this information on the 8th, on the first day of tampering, where guys are going to ultimately sign. Now, the thing that sucks about that is guys can change their mind within that window. You could agree. We saw Anthony Barr do it a few years ago. We've seen other guys do that where initially you're going here and then you get cold feet and you ultimately go back to where you were going, or you change your mind and you end up going here. Somebody swoops in. J.D. McKissick did it. The Bills were pissed off, right? Because they thought they had a deal in place with J.D. McKissick, and then Washington ended up swooping in and getting him back. So we've seen guys change their mind. That's the only thing that sucks with that tampering window. But it's a lot like the schedule release with the NFL. You used to have to wait until 8:00 that night when they dropped the schedule. Now you're getting bits and pieces of the schedule throughout the course of the day. By the time the schedule comes out, you already know 6, 7 of the games already. So, yeah, shit gets real after the combine. So it's a pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. But I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T, here on the 485th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. So just to give you a quick rundown of the schedule moving forward, your boy is going to be active over the next 5 days or so. You're going to see me every day after the combine. So you're going to see me tomorrow night because we got defensive linemen and tight ends, I believe, tomorrow night to kick off the real proceedings. Then you go into Friday and then into Saturday and into Sunday. And so I'm going to be live after it meets its conclusion each night. Tomorrow, the combine starts at 3, I believe. So it should be done by 8, 9 o'clock. So I'll be live right after. Same thing with Friday. Saturday and Sunday, they both get kicked off at 1, which is a blessing. So we should be out of there by 5 or 6. And so I'll be live after every day. If you're a Commanders fan, I'm going to be live tonight talking about the Commanders. Dan Quinn spoke. So we'll talk about what he had to say. We'll go back and circle back and talk about some of the things that Adam Peters said yesterday. And then we'll talk about, some draft things pertaining to the Commanders and also some free agency things pertaining to the Commanders. So hopefully I'll see you later on this evening for that show. But until next time, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. You guys take care. Have a good one. God bless and good